So we should be live in a minute, and we're right on the buzzer here. Okay, so we're streaming live, and hello to all our listeners and watchers. For the first time on You've Got Mel, I'm excited and nervous because I'm here with one of the internationally acclaimed, most famous, most illustrious jazz singers that ever roamed the planet. And I'm one of the lucky human beings who have actually got to know Sheila and even trained with her. So welcome, Sheila Jordan, the one and only.
Hi, it's so nice to see you, Mona. It's beautiful to be here, and thank you for having me as your guest. I'm very honored.
Well, we are incredibly honored, and usually we begin the show with a jingle, but I'm a little now intrepid, but we'll do it anyway. So, as we always begin the program with our jingle. Are you ready, Sheila?
I'm ready.
Okay. So why isn't it working? Okay. This. Okay. You can't hear it.
Take a break, settle.
Oy vey.
Get a chair, grab a seat, oh, sweep you off your feet. We groove, you got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while, all you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell, you got Mel. When the show begins, you better hold on real tight, or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a break, settle down, we're the only show in town. It's our road, don't you know, you got Mel. Give it up, don't think twice, we're a hurricane on ice. What the hell, give it yell, ring your bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give it smell, you got Mel. You got Mel.
And Mel as Sheila Jordan. Sheila, it's so great that you're with us.
Can you turn yourself up a little bit?
I can turn myself up a little bit, of course
Yeah,
I can.
because I can hardly hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Not great, but
Can you hear me medium?
a little less than medium.
Okay, I'm gonna come real close.
Okay.
So Sheila, where are you now in the world?
I'm in upstate New York at a little house that I bought, oh my goodness, in the mid-'80s. And it's called Charlie Parker Place. And the reason I call it Charlie Parker Place is because the money that I made from music and invested was concerts that I did. And of course, my hero was and always will be Charlie Parker. So there was a street that they did a big concert in New York City where they named the street after Charlie Parker, called Charlie Parker Place, where he used to live. In fact, they've made his building that he lived in, they've made it a landmark, you know, which is great. But the woman who did all of this, a great woman, she gave me a copy of the street sign, which was incredible. She knew how much I love birds. So I call it Charlie Parker Place, and the sign is out on my barn.
That's incredible. You could have called it the birdhouse too.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
No. So Sheila, so let's start with your childhood. You grew up in Pennsylvania during the Depression.
Yes.
And what was that like?
My mother was only 17 years old when she had me, and I believe that, you know, my father married her very close to the time I was born, because in those days, you know, you really had to have a name. So in order to give me a name, my father married my mother. I never really knew my father. He lived in Toledo, Ohio, but he was originally from Canada. And his mother was from the Cherokee Nation. And then on my mother's side, my grandfather, his four generation grandmother was Queen Aliquippa of the Seneca Nation. So I'm native on both sides, but more on my mother's side because Queen Aliquippa was quite the queen. In fact, she was so great they named a town in Pennsylvania after her, Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. But I grew up there. Yes, it was very poor because, I mean, we were very poor. We were the poorest family. There were two poor families in town, and we were one of them. And I think it would have maybe not been as bad, but my grandfather had a very serious alcohol problem. So a lot of the money that he made, he was a house painter and decorator, and a lot of the money that he made went into buying alcohol. You know, an alcoholic has to have they have to have their drugs. You know, so I grew up in that kind of an atmosphere. No hot water and no water in the house at all. A pump outside, an outside toilet. You had to walk almost a half a block to go to the toilet, and it was very cold in the winter. And we basically we had two bedrooms upstairs in the winter, and all of the kids slept in one room on mattresses on the floor, sheets, pillowcases. No, we didn't have that.
And
Very poor.
you grew up with other children in the family?
Yeah, because my mother was, as I said, was only 17, and the girls all moved to Detroit from Pennsylvania because they could get a job working in the automobile factory. And none of them went through high school. They went as far as grade school, learned how to read and write, and that was it. So, yeah, they all moved. They all moved to Detroit to work in the factories. And my mother, she couldn't raise me. She was much too young. So my grandparents raised me until I was 14. And then at 14, I moved back to Detroit to live with my mother.
So at what age did you say to yourself, Sheila, you can really be something?
Well, I was singing as a kid in Pennsylvania because they had radio programs there. And, you know, I came in second place one time, I think. Yes, I did, in fact. In fact, I got a fan letter from a guy. He didn't know my and he sent a letter of proposal. And my grandmother wrote back and said, I don't know, she's only 8 years old. Maybe she'll fire in 20 years. But yeah, they had these little radio programs, and I always sang for all of the PTAs and the different things that they'd have, because everybody in the town knew that I loved to sing, and having been on these little radio shows and stuff, didn't make any money, but I wasn't even into it. I mean, the money, I just loved to sing. I sang all the time. In fact, my grandfather called me Little Song. The only time I felt good when I was a little kid growing up was when I sang. And I sang all the time because I was a very unhappy child. The living conditions were not nice. It was cold and in the winter and no heat, and it was at a lot of times no food. So it was rough growing up, but I survived.
So
and then at 14, I moved to Detroit to be with my mother to go to high school in Detroit. And she was into, I think, about her 7th marriage. I mean, she was married so many times, it was unbelievable. And wow, but she was a sweet woman. And but she had the very serious disease of alcoholism. So I stayed with her, and her last husband was a creep. So at 17, I graduated from high school, and I got a job, part-time job, and I found a place called the Evangeline Home, which took care of young women who worked and went to school, and you got your room and board there. So I had a room, I was warm, I had my food, I got 3 meals a day. So, I grew up, that's how I grew up. in Detroit, and I loved it. I heard the music. As I said, I was always singing, but at that time, the great songs of the day were just coming out. So Cole Porter and Gershwin and all those cats, all their songs were famous. So there were great tunes coming up on. They had a thing called the Hit Parade on the radio, and if my grandfather paid the bill, then we could hear it. If he didn't, then of course the electric was cut off. But man, I used to listen to the Hit Parade whenever I could, and I learned all those songs. I had to learn them quick, you know. And then they sold these little magazines that were the lyrics of the songs, not the music itself, but just the lyrics. So I know I used to scrub this woman's floors for 20 cents, and you know, I would find little odd jobs to do when I was a little kid in Pennsylvania, like bring somebody's mail or whatever, and you know, make a couple of pennies here and there, and I'd save it, and then I bought this book, but that had all the lyrics of the songs in it.
So Sheila, you scrubbed floors to buy the lyrics of the songs.
To buy the lyrics of the songs, that's absolutely correct, and they were big floors.
But they were also great lyrics.
Oh God, yes, it was well worth it. I never thought twice about it.
So what were some of the songs that you remember singing back in the?
The boy on my mind, the one who's my ideal, obviously, all of those great films.
So you grew up during the era of the Great American Songbook.
I did, I think. Yeah, I believe I did. All I know is those songs were popular at the time, and I learned them. I learned them quickly because I loved music. It was the only thing that I felt, you know, I felt good about. And as I said, my grandfather called me Little Song because I was always singing.
Little Song.
Little Song.
And how did you get from Detroit to New York?
I was going with a wonderful saxophone player. As I said, I left home. I left my home in Detroit, my mother, when I was about 17, and found this place to live called the Evangeline Home, which I said gave you room and board. Then I worked a part-time job and finished high school and graduated. And I met Frank Foster, a saxophone player, an incredible saxophone player. And I think he was from Ohio, so he had moved to Detroit, and he had a place, a furnished room, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend. And so I started living with him. So he and I shared a furnished room on John R. in Detroit until he went into I guess it was the Korean War. And when he went into the war, I moved to New York. I had wanted to move to New York because I had to be near Charlie Parker. He was my idol.
So you had heard about him.
Oh yeah. Well, the first time I heard Bird, I was in high school, and they had a jukebox where you bought your hamburgers and your lunch during the lunch break. So I remember I would always save a nickel and I would put it in the jukebox and play the songs, you know, these really great tunes. And this one time I saw this song on the jukebox. It was called Charlie Parker and his Reboppers, not Beboppers, Reboppers. Now's the time. And I said, oh, I wonder what that sounds like. I mean, I was looking for music to do. I didn't know what kind of music I wanted to do. I just loved to sing, but I knew that I wanted to find some kind of music to dedicate my life to. I put it on 5 notes. I heard Charlie Parker play, and Now's the Time. Charlie Parker and his Reboppers. Oh my God. My skin crawled. I said, oh my God, I'll dedicate my life to this music, whether I sing it, teach it, or just support it, whatever. It's what I've been looking for. This is the music I would dedicate my life to. So what I did was I found that there was a place in Detroit, downtown Detroit, that didn't sell alcohol, so kids could go there and play. And it was down there that I met these 2 guys, Skeeter Spive and Leroy Mitchell. and they were singing Charlie Parker tunes. And I had learned all these tunes from buying the records.
They were scatting, Sheila, or with
Well,
lyrics?
lyrics and scattered. And probably Peter Spider is the greatest scat singer I ever heard in my life. And it was sad because when my house up here, my first house burned down, the two things I lost that were most important to me, I lost everything, but one of them was Peter Spike singing, scatting, on a little cassette tape that I had recorded when I went back to Detroit and he was still alive. I lost that. And the other thing was Bill Evans had written down his chord changes on a paper napkin from a club in New York City. I think it was the Embers where he was working. And I loved his chord changes on If You Could See Me Now. And I was recording Blue Note record at that time. And George Russell, who was prominent in getting me my record date, took me to hear Bill because I loved him. And he had Bill, he said, she would like to have your chord changes on If You Could See Me Now, but she'd like to record them. And so those are the two things I lost in that fire. But getting back to when I first heard Bird, that was it. And trying to find out who played this music was through this little club that was just for teenagers. And I met Tommy Flanagan, Barry Harris, and Teddy Burrell, plus Skeeter Spider and Leroy Mitchell, who were the two guys that I ended up singing with. We had a little trio together.
Yeah.
And of course, they were African and I was white. So it was kind of rough on us because Detroit was, and still is for that matter, very, very prejudiced. Not that New York isn't, not that the U.S. isn't other places, but having to grow up in that, I never knew color like it was. I didn't know that. I mean, growing up the way I did and being prejudiced against because being so poor and all the alcoholism, I could identify with African kids. I'm very, very strongly. In fact, all of my friends, my girlfriends were all Afro Americans. I remember one time when I was in high school, the principal called me into her office. He said, "You dress so nice. Why do you hang with colored girls?"
Oy vey.
And I said, "I don't know where this came from, Mel. It was like really weird." I said, "Oh, purple, orange, red?" I went through this whole thing and she just looked at me disgustingly because she knew I had hit something. She said, "Get out, go on, get out," and I left. But that was in high school and that was the principal. So I'm talking about the prejudice being even in the schools.
So that's an oy vey moment for sure.
Yeah.
Sheila, can you sing a few bars of from your early career with the trio?
From
Just to
what?
give, can you sing a few bars of one of the songs from those days?
One of the songs from those days?
Yeah, one of the early songs from your career.
From my career, I didn't have a career then. I just loved the music. I still don't have a career. I don't know why I ever got as far as I did. I mean, I'm grateful, but I just love the music. I love to keep it up. Well, all of those tunes, like where that's Barbados, a song that was written by Charlie Parker.
So,
And Steve Fight and Leroy Mitchell put words to it. And then 20 years later, I put another chorus of lyrics to it. So we
so,
sang that. I mean, any bird tune we sang confirmation. And it's just bird freak. And Skeeter Fight and Leroy Mitchell, they loved bird as much as I did. So, wow.
Were you like kind of Bird groupies back in the day, and you went to New York
Oh,
to meet
yeah.
him?
Oh, we were bird groupies, all right. Yes, indeed. I remember there was a place called the Gravestone Ballroom in Detroit, and it was a place where they put on concerts. And it was great for us kids because we were teenagers and we could go there because they didn't sell alcohol. It was just a concert, but it was the kind of concert where you could dance even if you wanted to. But you didn't even sit down. I mean, we stood in front of the bandstand. All the people stood in front of the bandstand just to hear somebody like Charlie Parker. And that was the first time I heard Charlie Parker live. And I was
Wow.
with Judy Spite and Leroy Mitchell. And there was a saxophone, older saxophone player, a wonderful Billy Mitchell, his name was, and he lived in Detroit. And he must have told Bird that there were kids that sang his tune, that sang Bird's tunes. And because, he knew Bird, of course. Everybody knew Billy. Billy was a great saxophone. He just never made it outside of New York City. He might have come to New York years later, but at that time, I mean, Detroit, he was the man in Detroit. So,
Sheila, did Charlie Parker bring you guys up to sing with him?
yeah, well, that's what happened. So Billy Mitchell said, there's kids that sing you. And Bird said, oh, really? I guess he said, oh, really, or something. I don't know. But anyway, Bird was finished with his break. And then he went back up to play. And he played one tune. And after he was finished, he said, ladies and gentlemen, I have like a surprise for you. I have some young singers in the house that are going to come up and sing. So how would you like that? And everybody clapped, and we were looking around. Gee, I wonder who those singers are. That's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. And Bird looked over at us. He said, you guys, I mean, you guys. And we looked at each other. Whoa. We went up, and I don't remember what we sang. We probably sang Confirmation. We did a Bird tune, whatever it was. Now's the Time, Confirmation, one of those things. It might have been Confirmation. Sang the lyrics and improvised, and then afterwards, Bird came over to us to thank us, and he looked at me and he said, kids, you have $1 million ears. I said, wow, I was embarrassed. I had no clue what $1 million ears meant. And it was really wow because years later, after Frank went into the Army and I moved to New York to be close to Charlie Parker's music, because that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be on 52nd Street, which was the place at the time, the old Downbeat Club. All of those great clubs were there, on 52nd Street. And, I went into one of the old Birdland was on 52nd Street at that time. So I remember a friend of mine said, I'm going to hear Charlie Parker at Birdland. Would you like to go along? And I said, yes, of course. So I went. And so during the break, he said, I'm going back to say hello to Bird. Do you want to come with me? And I said, yeah. So I went backstage with her, and Bird was there. And he hugged her and kissed her. He was glad to see her. And then he looked at me and said, I know you. You're the kid with the $1 million ears. I was
Wow.
shocked. I mean, this is years later, and we became very good friends. Bird and I, from that moment on, he took my address, he took my phone number, and he was like a big brother to me. Nothing romantic, just a big brother. Uh, I love Bird so much. I married his piano player, Duke Jordan.
I was just going to say there couldn't have been any romance if you married Duke.
No, I married Duke Jordan. And I laugh sometimes. I kid around. I say, yeah, I married Duke Jordan so I could be near Bird's music. But
So,
yeah, so that was it. And then so that, of course, all that happened after Frank went into the war, and we sort of drifted apart after he went into the Army. And I didn't see him too much. I saw him one time. He came home on leave, and I had my loft, and I was living in New York, and he came by and stayed with me at the loft, and I said, Frank, I'm going up to hear Charlie Parker tonight. You want to go and hear Bird at Birdland? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, bring your horn. He said, no, I don't want to bring my horn. I said, bring your horn, man. So he said, oh, well, he said, oh, okay. So anyway, we got to hear Bird, and Bird afterwards came over to me because he was glad to see me because we had become good friends. And I said, this is Frank Foster, and he's he plays tenor sax. And Bird said, oh man, come on up and sit in with me. And Frank was like, what? he was kind of like, I don't know about that, but he blew his ass off. He went up there and he was sounding great. And Bird came to me afterwards and he said, boy, that soldier boy sure can play. And I said, thanks, Bird. Thank you for letting him play. I knew you'd like him. So anyway.
So Sheila, did you perform much with Bird?
No, I never performed with Bird. I sat in because by that time I was involved with Duke, and we were living together, and I would sing with Duke, and he knew all my keys and the tunes I did. So a lot of times if he had a gig with Bird, which was most of the time, because Duke was Bird's piano player. He loved his Jordan.
Yeah.
Miles didn't like him, but Bird liked it. I remember one time I was at a rehearsal sound check, and Miles was on the gig with Bird, and Duke was on piano, and Max on drums, and Tommy Potter on bass. And Miles said to Bird, why don't you get John Lewis instead of this cat? And I'll never forget it. Bird looked at Miles, he said, Miles, this is my band. When you get your band, you get John Lewis. My piano player is Dick Jordan. Now, if you don't like that and you're not happy with that, you can leave. I never forgot that. And I was like, oh, because Miles could be kind of unkind.
Yeah. So Sheila, I'm wondering how many people there are that knew Bird as well as you. A few sentences on the personality. We all know the music. What was he like what was Bird like as a guy, a human being?
Charlie Parker was brilliant. Unfortunately, he had the cunning, baffling, powerful disease of drug addiction and alcoholism, and a lot of cats. In those days, he was the hero of everybody. All the cats loved Bird, and they loved him, and they thought if they got high on heroin, they could play like him, I guess, which is not true. But it was too bad, like that Bird never got into a program of recovery. I don't even know. Well, the programs were around then, but obviously he wasn't ready, and it wasn't. He died at 34. I want you to know, and he was in his 60s. I remember, of course I went to his funeral. I was very close with. I got very close with Bird.
But
Charlie Parker turned me on to Igor Stravinsky and Bela Bartok. He brought a recording under his arm up to my loft and said, I want you to hear these. And he played them for me. Go ahead, you were going to ask me something?
No, because, when you're so close to a real genius, a lot of genius people are not nice people. Was Bird nice?
Oh, he was wonderful. He was beautiful to everybody. Excuse me. He always encouraged people. He was wonderful. Even if somebody didn't play that great, he would encourage them. Excuse me. So
he wasn't dismissive of less worthy musicians.
Never saw Bird do that. I've had this cold for a while, so I'm very sorry. I'm coughing, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you want me to get you some water?
Yeah, pass it there.
I'll be back in a minute. So, and Sheila, through this, all of this period, with Duke and with all of the other cats, you managed to stay clear of the alcohol and the drugs?
No, I did not. Drugs, yes. I was terrified of needles. So I never became a junkie. I never used heroin. But since alcoholism was very prominent in my family and in my background, I didn't drink I drank in high school, of course, because all the kids did. But then after I got out of high school, I didn't drink anymore because I saw what it did to my family, you know. So I didn't really get into alcohol until years later. And then I worked in this little club in the village called the Page 3 in New York City. And I worked there. This was after my daughter was born, too. She was only a baby. And Duke had basically left us because of his heroin addiction and his problems. And, you know, I just let him go. I figured, you know, whatever, you know, when it's time for a divorce, I'll get a divorce. But at that time, I worked at this little club in the village, and I only made $6 a night, and I tried all my songs there, you know. And it was and actually the bass player on one of the nights there was Steve Swallow.
Wow.
And Steve Swallow was playing acoustic bass. That's where I met Steve Swallow.
Is that when you started doing the duets of just scatting with it?
Well, yeah, because I would, of course, and then the piano player that night would get upset because I wanted to do my tunes that I was able, you know, that I did with the bass only, and they played for like tap dancers, strippers, comedians, and I was a new note in jazz, they called me. So, but this one night was jam night, so they didn't have that many, like the comedians and all that stuff. It was mostly like me and a couple of blues singers, and that was it. So I did 2 sets, and I remember, you know, I made the $6, and I had an office job typing to raise my daughter, you know, to pay my rent, buy the food, and buy her clothes, etc. But the $6 I made from the Page 3, by the time I paid the babysitter, because it went till 4 o'clock in the morning, by the time I paid the babysitter the $4 and took a taxi home, which was cheap at the time, $1 maybe, and I had $1 left. But I didn't do it for money.
Sheila, you worked in an office job for years and years.
I started working, and when I was in Detroit, I worked in an office.
And did you perform all of this time?
Well, yeah, I found, as I said, you know, in Detroit, you know, I would go to the sessions on the weekends, to that place I told you about. But when I moved to New York, yeah, I worked at this little club that I made the $6 at. Yeah. And I didn't do it for the money because I was doing my office job, you know, 5 days a week.
No, but I mean, did this continue for the next 10, 20 years when you were working?
From the time I was, well, in Detroit, concluding Detroit, from the time I was 17 until I was, I think I stopped when I was 61. I think I quit office work.
Uh-huh. So, but and during this time, you released albums.
Yeah, well, I'm not great on releasing albums. I'm not a great, you know, I'm not a pusher, and I don't go out there, and I'm not crazy about recording.
Sheila, you are the most talented, by far, jazz person I know, and also the most generous. And as you know, I flew to London about 10 years ago, just to be in a workshop that you gave. And I felt like I was among royalty. I felt like I was like coming to see the Queen. And and you said something incredible to me that I will never forget. And after I sang, I think Paper Moon or something, you said to me, You play horn, right?
I knew. I knew the way you phrased, of course.
But
Yes,
but what I wanted to mention this. You were performing in Foyles, this huge department store of books and music in London, and you had this Friday afternoon gig, and there was a few hundred people amid the books and the records, and you were singing, and all of a sudden people started ordering coffee. I don't know if you remember this, and you started scatting with the coffee machine.
oh no, I don't remember that.
Yeah, and like the noise of the espresso machine, which
Yeah.
which was irksome at the beginning, and you turned it into part of your song.
Yeah, that sounds like something I do.
So what is the and you've taught so many hundreds, thousands of singers,
I love
and
to teach. I love to teach.
and you're an amazing teacher, I must say.
Well, thank you.
But can you teach scat? I mean, a lot of scat singers, like when you sing, you don't see the solfege in front of your eyes. You're inventing music without thinking about exactly about the notes, the scales.
Well, this is what I do because I didn't have formal training, school training. Like I didn't go to school for music, So most of my things are from hearing. I mean, I know I can pick out a tune on the piano, if I want to learn a tune, but even that isn't great. Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to go to school to learn when I was a kid because we couldn't afford it. Uh, but most of mine is like through my ears, I hear. Uh, what I do know, though, and this is what I teach singers, which you might remember, if you're going to do anything to a song at all, learn it the way it was written first. Don't try to start, going crazy with it. If you don't know what it's like, what the tune is like to begin with, learn the original melody note, note for note, exactly as it's written, time-wise and otherwise.
Okay, but as a scat singer, is it important to know the lyrics too?
Well, it's important to know the lyrics as a singer, period, whether you scat sing or whether you just, are a swinging singer, not all jazz singers uh, scat, some of
Mhm.
them are afraid of it and don't want to do it and don't like it. As I say, there's a scat virus going around. All of a sudden, if you don't scat, you're not a jazz singer. And a lot of instrumentalists will tell singers that. And my answer to that is the next time they say that to you, I tell the singers this. The next time an instrumentalist says you're not a jazz singer because you don't scat, say, excuse me, but do you think Billie Holiday was a jazz singer? And there's no way in hell that can say no. They have to say yes. So then your answer is, well, Billie Holiday never scat sang.
So Sheila, I now remember an episode from the workshop you gave in Tel Aviv.
Oh, you do?
Yes, and that was either it was me or somebody else singing "I Can't Give You Anything But Love,"
Uh-huh.
and nobody really knows the exact melody. and I remember you said, nobody sings learn the song the way it was originally written, not like everybody else sings it.
Yeah. I can't give you any. Is that the one you did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to sing it?
No.
I'm not going to sing it
Why not?
because you've got Mel. You're my guest. You're the
Oh.
You're the singer. I'm the student.
Well, anyway, just getting back to that, then it's so as all I'm saying is it's extremely important to learn. If you hear a song, so usually when I hear a song, The thing I hear before anything else is the melody. If I like the melody of the song, even if the lyrics suck, I can change the lyrics. But if it's a bad melody in the chord, if it's not going anywhere, then I'm not interested. The thing that I hear in the very beginning is I hear the melody. I hear the tune. And if I love the music of the song, then I'll go out of my way to like really learn it. And as I said, and if the lyrics are no good, I'll change them. That's all.
Yes.
I've got it.
I'm dying to ask you the following question, Sheila. It's something I never asked you. In the 1960s, there was this band from Britain, four guys who also never had proper musical education. They were called the Beatles.
They were called who?
The Beatles.
Oh, the Beatles, yes, of course.
So, what are there any songs of the Beatles that you particularly like?
I like their songs very much. Not that I sing them, but did they write that song? I read the news today, oh boy.
Sure.
That's an incredible song, lyric.
Yeah.
And the melody too. Yes. Yeah, I like the Beatles very much. I mean, not like I like Bird, of course, but I mean, I respected what they did, and they just wrote great tunes. Their songs made sense to me. They were stories. They were truthful stories. Yeah, they were wonderful.
So Sheila, I'm giving a course now on popular music. I have two courses, one on 60s music and one on popular music. The course on popular music asks one question the whole semester, and I'm going to bring you on as a guest in the fall when we start. But what like there are songs from the 30s and 40s that people still know, even people who aren't jazz singers. All of me, why not take all of me? That's from 1930. What makes this song so good that it's popular for 70, 80 years after it's written?
Well, that's a pretty simple tune. To be very honest with you, I don't really like that song that much.
That's okay, but everybody knows it.
I never saw it. It's a simple song, but I mean, I think it's a song that a lot of the singers, have learned, and it's simple to learn, and it's got a swinging feeling.
So can you give me a popular song that isn't so simple, that you still love, but it was written in the 1940s and everybody knows it?
Oh my God. I'm trying to think.
Harry Arlen, Cole Porter, Gershwin.
All of those, yeah, all of those composers. I like that. Let's face the music and dance before the fiddlers of Scat. That's a wonderful song. Wonderful melody and wonderful lyrics.
By a guy named Irving Berlin.
That's correct.
And he also didn't have musical training. What a talent!
Surprise to me, yes. Yeah, I think sometimes it's just boring in those great.
So Sheila, take a song like that. Let's Face the Music and Dance. It's been covered by hundreds of artists. What makes the song so special that it's like, I don't know, 80 years old?
It's got an incredibly interesting melody, and the way it goes from the A, and then repeats again, and then the bridge. In this case, this song has a bridge, which is the middle. And then it goes back to the last day with a little tag on the end. But also the lyrics are the great lyrics. There may be trouble ahead, but while there's moonlight music and love and romance, let's face the music and dance before the fiddlers have fled. I mean, you can almost see those fiddlers playing and then say, the gig's over, let's go.
before they ask us to pay the bill.
Oh, yeah, they're in a club, they're in this wherever, and this, you know, the fiddlers, whoever, they have a band. Maybe it's a string quartet. I don't know.
Sheila, I got goosebumps. You know, before they ask us to pay the bill, and while we still have the chance, let's face the music and dance.
The moon, humming a different tune. But until then, right? Till then there be teardrops to share. But while there's moonlight, music, and love and romance, let's face the music and dance, dance. Let's face the music and dance. I mean, that's the way it's written. When I do my bass and voice, I do a section on dance, which I dedicate to my first influence was Fred Astaire. Bird wasn't on the scene yet. So before Bird, it was Freddie. Freddie was my hero. I wanted to be Ginger Rogers. I knew that I was, as I said, I scrubbed that woman's floors and walked 2 miles for a Fred Astaire movie and would sit through it like as many times as I could. And then they throw me out. Say, kid, it's time to go home. But only to see Freddie and hear Fred sing. I loved his singing. I loved it. Oh, what a dancer. Oh my God. You know, and I would be in heaven.
So Sheila, I wanted to ask you, during the bebop performances, was Bird happy when everybody would get up and dance?
Yes. Yes. I think he loved having his music dance too, yes. But of course, Birdland, there wasn't a place to dance.
Yeah.
That I remember, no. There was a dance floor, but they usually had tables where the dance floor was because, you know, it was a jazz club. And then after the regular group was finished, then they'd move the chairs and tables and then people would dance.
Because I was lucky to perform with a big band about 20 years ago.
Oh, really? From London?
Yeah, in Israel.
From Israel?
Yeah, and they didn't like when people got up and danced when they were playing, and I thought how peculiar that is, because big band music is dance music.
Well, you know, they probably felt that there were like soloists. And the music was very intricate. The music was very intricate, and there were great soloists, and they wanted people to sit and listen and not dance.
Exactly, but Charlie Parker didn't mind when people danced.
Oh no, he loved it, man. No, he was cool.
That's so great.
Let me ask you something. Can I answer this phone and take it off the hook?
You can answer the phone. We have to. Sheila, we have to go soon anyway.
Oh, we do?
Do you want to answer the phone?
Yeah.
So I'm here by myself, interviewing this. I want to say incredible, but actually miraculous human being, generous human being, incredible. A jazz singer and no less incredible jazz teacher. And a lot of the singers across the world, like another mentor of mine, Anita Wardell, have also been students of Sheila. I hope she'll come back soon, otherwise I'm going to sing. So interesting that she picked an Irving Berlin song. But that really is a remarkable song when you think about it. Soon we'll be without the moon, sharing a different tune, and then there may be teardrops to shed, and so on. So we're here with Sheila Jordan, who has fled, and we're going to wait until she comes back. And then we're going to say goodbye to this incredible lady. She was supposed to be on tour in Europe and in Japan. And poor Sheila, like so many other artists, restricted to home. And I know from my years as a musician that it's in our blood. We have to get out and perform, even if there's 2 or 3 people in the audience. So this is a difficult time for musicians everywhere. So I hope you're admiring the china on the wall. And hopefully Sheila will be back with us shortly. Sheila.
Yes, sir.
I kept them busy, and I even sang a few bars
What did you sing?
of Let's Face the Music, because
Good.
it's an incredible choice. And I told them that you should have been on tour now, but like all the Corona people.
Yes, I should have been.
And Sheila, I want to say one more thing before we part.
Okay.
And I don't know whether I ever told you this, but I'm going to cry when I tell you.
Oh.
You were born one day before my mother.
Really?
Yes, you were born on November 18th.
And your mom's born on the 19th.
Yeah, she's no longer with us physically, but she's in my spirit. She loved jazz, and my dad, and they went to all my performances, and they would have loved this interview. So I'm from Israel. I'm sending you love, hugs from the Holy Land.
I want to see you soon. When this is all over, I hope I can see you, and I hope we can sing together.
Well, that would be the greatest gift. So Sheila,
now please be in touch with me.
I am, and I will be. And
guess what? And keep singing.
Oh, and nothing's going to stop me. Nothing's going to stop me from singing. Sheila Jordan, I love you. This has been remarkable. Bye, sweetheart.
Love to you, Mel. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Doll.
Thank you, my dear. Keep singing. Bye-bye, sweetie.
Nothing's going to stop me.
Bye-bye.
Bye, dear.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.